surviving. We're only looking good because of our military might, because we are an empire. But this farce cannot go on forever.
On Contact with Chris Hedges. When we look back on this sad, pathetic period in American history, we will ask the questions all who have slid into despotism ask. Why were we asleep? Why did we allow this to happen? Why didn't we see it coming? Why didn't we resist? Why did we allow the corporate state to strip away the rights of poor people of color and force them to live in terror in police states? Why did we permit corporations to deindustrialize our nation and thrust the working class into poverty? Why did we swallow the absurdity of neoliberal ideology that told us the dictates of the marketplace and Wall Street should govern every aspect of our society? Why did the press and the academy stand mute as money replaced the vote and lobbyists authored our laws? Why did they render the poor and the working poor invisible? RT correspondent Anya Parampel looks at the plight of over half the country living in poverty.
In his 1961 inaugural address, John F. Kennedy declared, "The world is very different now, for man holds in his mortal hands the power to abolish all forms of human poverty and all forms of human life." Over 5 decades later, that power to abolish human poverty has not been harnessed in the United States. According to the Social Security Administration, as of 2015, half of the American population made $30,000 a year or less. Working a 40-hour work week, that comes to a wage of about $14.42 an hour. According to the Alliance for Just Society, a living wage in the U.S. would be more like $16.87 an hour, and that's just to afford the basics. And while poverty doesn't discriminate, it does impact some groups of people more than others. According to Poverty USA, as of 2015, 14.8% of American women live in poverty, compared with 12.2% of men. 14.9% of single dads are in dire straits, while a whopping 28.2% of single moms live below the poverty threshold. As you can imagine, this means children are impacted most. In 2015, 19.7% of American children, that's 1 out of every 5, lived in conditions of poverty. The National Center on Family Homelessness found in 2013 that 2.5 million children experienced homelessness at some point during the year. That's 1 in every 30 children in the U.S. But it's not just children, the elderly suffer as well, with the senior poverty rate weighing in at 13.7%. Overall, Black Americans have the highest poverty rate at 24.1%, with Hispanics making up the second poorest demographic. 11.4% of Asians live in poverty, while whites have the lowest rate at 9%. While we may as a society have the resources and tools to alleviate the suffering of these people, as Kennedy believed, for nearly half of the population, just making enough money to survive is a struggle.
Thank you, Anya. Lynn Din is author of Postcards from the End of America. In the book, he lifts up the voices of those who've been disappeared by our corporate state, the homeless in tent cities, the elderly and sick, those working 70 hours a week, barely able to survive, and those struggling with the violence, addictions, despair, and abuse that always comes with chronic poverty. He chronicles from city to city in graphic and moving detail the accelerating collapse of the United States and its tragic human cost. Thank you. So the power of this book is that you both give voice and a visual, I think, not only through your photographs, but through your brilliant writing. You take half of this country, which has been rendered invisible, and make them visible. And I think in doing that, you expose what's happening within the American empire. If there's a common thread in terms of, the cities that you go to, the experiences that you write about, the lives that you chronicle, what is it?
Well, I would say it's more than half. I think the majority of the people in this country are living the lives I describe in my book. And I'm always surprised by how astounded some readers get by my depictions, because they say, wow, these are the down and outs, these are the low lives, who are these people? These are the people I've known all my lives.
Right.
You know, so the commonality that I see is this growing despair and degree of anger. And so it gives rise to the false narrative that we, in the recovery, that we're doing so well. We're not doing well at all.
Describe a little bit about, we were talking before on air about Barbara Ehrenreich describing the life of the poor as one long emergency, that kind of stress, which is a kind of common theme throughout the lives that you chronicle. Describe a little bit about, you know, what the emotional state, both the economic and emotional state of the people you write about.
Well, even when things were relatively going well, these lives were very difficult, you know, because I was a house painter, I was a house cleaner. I worked with these people. I mean, it wasn't like an experiment. I mean, I had to do these jobs, and I could barely believe how difficult it was to get by day to day. Physically and mentally and spiritually. So it has only gotten harder because the anxiety and the stress of losing your job or not being able to perform your job daily is astounding, and I would say it affects a majority of Americans right now. So and it's only going to get worse, you know. But you can't see it from a privileged place like, say, Manhattan, or the Bay Area.
You can't see it. The corporate media doesn't reflect this reality either.
But see, the thing is, whenever they talk about unemployment figures or the state of the economy, you read the comments, okay? You know, and the comments, people howling and cursing the article, but so most people know that these articles are just nonsense.
Right.
But you know, if you're not threatened, you know, with your livelihood, you will tend to believe these articles. You know, I think there's an intellectual class, people who reads. You, for example, or me, for example, you know, read alternative news. We're not talking about CNN or Fox News. We're talking about even alternative media. Even the people who read alternative media don't know how bad it is.
Well, you got to go. The only way to know is to do what you did, which is go there.
Yeah.
That's it. And most people don't go there. Even people whose sympathies might be with the underclass don't go.
And you know, what's more disturbing, there's a hatred of these people.
Yeah, that's right. That's okay. You're very right.
I think on the left always pretend to talk about the masses, the working class, but it really hates the working class. It does. You know, because it doesn't pay any attention to the working class, and it mocks their values.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, it mocks them. It ridicules them. It makes fun of them as irredeemable racists, as bigots, as uneducated.
And they're not. I mean, these people are not alien to me. I've been around the so-called underclass my whole life because I'm a part of the underclass. Okay. I mean, I may not look this way now because I have my funeral and wedding suit on, but you know, day to day, these are my people. Okay. So I'm just saying, they know how to accommodate other people, other races, other ethnic groups, because they have to deal with that daily. Okay, the underclass has no means of withdrawing into the enclave. You know, they have to take the bus, they have to take the train, they have to drink at bars that are mixed with, you know, all kinds of different types of people. So the underclass is actually less racist than the educated class, in my experience. You know, because they're less condescending to me, in my experience.
To what extent you came to the United States at the age of 11? Is that correct? From Vietnam as a refugee. In a sense, I mean, I think all of the great, brilliant chroniclers of any society are kind of one step removed, outsiders, people like W.E. Du Bois or James Baldwin. To what extent does that separation allow you to see things that perhaps those of us who are native to the United States, well, I mean, after displacing indigenous people, are unable to see?
Well, yes. I mean, I'm an outsider. I mean, because I arrived here as an immigrant. I write in English, which is not my native.
I mean, you were a refugee.
I was a refugee too.
I mean, you were living in tents like Syrians.
Sure. And you know, I was living in tents in Guam, and living in army barracks in Arkansas, and you know, I'm also writing in a language not my own. Okay, so of course I'm an outsider, but that's fine. That used to disturb me. I used to try to figure out a way to wiggle in, but I realized it's hopeless because I'm not part of the, you know, any kind of mainstream, which is fine, because then I realized a lot of Americans are not part of the mainstream either.
Right.
You know, including white Americans. So I don't draw this boundary, this distinction between, say, people of color, so to speak, and white Americans, because a lot of white Americans are also alienated and also excluded from any participation in this economy, in this culture, in any meaningful way.
I want to read a passage from your book. Along with the visible decay that can be seen in cities and small towns alike, there is a widespread malaise afflicting the American spirit, and this is most acutely felt among the younger set. If they have gone to college, then they are most likely crippled with insane debt while stuck in a job that doesn't require their overpriced yet diluted education.